In the front line, it's a psychological war, and on this occasion, words on the ammunition as leaflets are dropped, assuring the communists of fair treatment if they surrender.
This is Mr. Moneybags. He is enjoying Christmas in Florida and he is getting rich in the process. Why? Because you are dying in the cold winter of Korea fighting a war that does not concern you. At least that's what this leaflet wants you to think. It was made in the Christmas of 1951 and dropped via airplane by the Korean Communist forces. But they were not the only ones doing that. In fact, over 1 billion leaflets were dropped during that war, most of them coming from the United Nations. The goal was to demoralize the enemy and to gain trust from the civilians. Since the Great War, many nations understood the power of attacking the mind and the morale instead of the body. That sometimes the advantage can be achieved by reminding the enemy of the absurdity of dying in a foreign country for a cause that is so distant. These are also a few examples made by the Axis powers during World War II. The messages are ruthless and they are designed to target different dimensions of the human psyche. They scratch some of our basic fears: dying or being physically hurt, being abandoned or cheated on, hurting those who matter to you. You can find all of these and more in the links below. And even though these leaflets look old, they're not a thing of the past. During the Iraq War, the US military dropped more than 25 million leaflets in just 6 months. One of the main goals was to get the enemy troops to tune into US radio stations, so as to discourage them from fighting for Saddam Hussein. Oh, and to make them stop burning oil wells. A more recent example from 2010 is a campaign masterminded by José Miguel Sokoloff. He helped the Colombian military dealing with the FARC by applying his marketing expertise. Just like the Koreans, he knew that Christmas is the most vulnerable time of the year for armed forces, and so he set up Operation Christmas. His team simply set up Christmas lights on the trees in the jungle where the FARC were hiding, and alongside it, the following message: if Christmas can come to the jungle, you can come home. Demobilize. At Christmas, everything is possible. And with this message, they saw a 30% increase in the number of defectors compared to the same periods the previous year. But Sokoloff's work was not over yet. A year later, and after collecting as much info as possible from the deserters, his team launched the operation Rivers of Light. They discovered that it was much more likely to find guerrilla fighters on the networks of rivers than to find them walking in the jungle. And so, they decided to make the campaign more impactful and more personal. They filled each of these balls with rosary beads and handwritten notes from family members of the fighters asking them to come home. And then they released them on the rivers with glowing lights in the hopes that they would be intercepted by the FARC. And the campaign was so interesting that even the president made an appearance.
Regresen al seno de sus hogares, que lo que queremos en este país, los 46 millones de colombianos y el mundo entero, es la paz.
It is hard to measure the effectiveness of these psychological campaigns, but what we do know is that later on, when it was possible to finally negotiate for peace, the FARC leaders asked for the suspension of all these campaigns. Attacking the human mind is a strategy as old as war itself, and has been constantly morphing. From Genghis Khan actually catapulting decapitated heads into the walls of besieged cities, to Soviet bloc intelligence spreading the myth that HIV was man-made, to invoke social revolt. Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War over 2000 years ago that the true pinnacle of excellence is subjugating the enemy's armies without fighting. And what strikes me the most about this sentence is how well it still fits today. Professor Lawrence H. Keeley analyzed in his book War Before Civilization how likely it is for a male to die due to warfare throughout time. And even though it might seem that things are rough nowadays, or that the 20th century was the bloodiest period in human history, it pales in comparison to our tribal origins. Even our hunter-gatherer ancestors were much more likely to die at the hands of another man than people living in the most violent place on earth today. In fact, humans are becoming more and more peaceful and armed conflicts are almost extinct. Steven Pinker has a fascinating book and TED-Talk about this. As Anne-Marie Slaughter puts it, the tendency over the 21st century will be for conflicts to be fought by special forces conducting limited operations or on the digital frontier. An armed conflict between major powers no longer brings a net positive, nor can be economically justified. It sacrifices human life, damages the reputation of attacking countries, hinders trade activity, wastes money and resources. That's why no nuclear weapons have been used since 1945, even though the nations who have them being involved in conflict. Most nations have no problem using violence, they just want to do it in a cost-effective way. That's why the major powers have departments now dedicated to psyops, and they are not using them only on battlefields, they are using them to affect the economic strength of other countries, their national morale, their social and political cohesion. For instance, in this 2021 report by the US Army, China is reported to have 3 strategic warfares that are used in support of their traditional warfare operations. They are legal, psychological, and public opinion warfare. And why wouldn't they, right? It advances their political agenda while saving on expensive weaponry and while avoiding casualties. It's much cheaper to pay a group of writers to sway public opinion than making military operations that create a threatful atmosphere. And I'm saying China, but every major nation has similar strategies. And these strategies involve you, they involve me, they involve all of us. Astroturfing refers to coordinated campaigns that support a specific agenda. They are pushed by some organization, but they appear to be natural, independent, and to have widespread support. Some of these campaigns are obviously artificial, and sometimes the individuals involved end up being caught. One unsuspicious morning, the internet woke up to this tweet: a black gay guy who does not like Obama. Okay, except Senator Dean Browning forgot to switch to his fake account and posted on his official one. Recently, we even had the Cambridge Analytica example, where social media campaigns were so prevalent and personal that they managed to manipulate the political outcome of not just the US and UK, but over 100 elections spanning more than 30 countries.
We would know what kinds of messaging you would be susceptible to and where you're going to consume that. And then how many times do we need to touch you with that in order to change how you think about something? You know, it is a full-service propaganda machine.
At this very moment, companies and military departments are creating thousands upon thousands of fake profiles. Some of them are being used and discarded right away, others are being built in the shadows, so that one day they may emerge and support whatever cause. They follow Facebook pages, support clubs, comment on news.
They like everything. Other accounts I saw, they like kitchen scrubbers and they like mouthwash. Who reports that on their Facebook page?
But how much of that behavior is actually humans? It's estimated that 30 to 40% of all online traffic is not coming from humans. Companies like Facebook are trying hard to eliminate bots, but that means deleting close to an entire world population of fake accounts every year. And they are becoming increasingly hard to distinguish. In 2013, it was reported that almost half of the YouTube traffic was coming from bots masquerading as humans. This number was so high that the YouTube staff even feared that their bot detection system could be subverted. That if at one point the majority of the traffic started coming from bots, the bot detection system could start reporting that traffic as the real one. This hypothetical problem was called the inversion. Today, most countries have their own bot legions, their click farms, their political shields. The battlefields are no longer filled with trenches, but with online comments. The cavalry was substituted by the public opinion warfare department, and the price for the lack of physical violence is a threat of constant psychological influence. The internet is a beautiful place, but best enjoyed with prudence. Make sure you're not a pawn in a war you didn't sign up for. My name is Mario, and thanks for watching.